Hi everyone, this is a new tutorial for the Roland MC-505. This time I want to talk about MIDI functions, MIDI connectivity, and I think to explain things a little better, I changed the focus of my camera here a little bit so that you can see what kind of instruments I'm using for this. I have my controller keyboard hooked up here. You can just see these upper keys here in the lower left corner somewhere. Then the MIDI out from the controller keyboard is hooked up to the MIDI in of the MC-505, and the MIDI out of the MC-505 is sent to the MIDI in of the Waldorf Q here, micro Q. Feels a bit odd to say this in English or American. We would say Waldorf micro Q. Not too many people would actually say micro Q, which is the German way of pronouncing this, but that's taking things a bit too far. And by the way, when talking about pronunciation, I always think it's a bit funny when I run into these debates of whether the correct pronunciation is Moog or Moog, because you take it from me, it's both incorrect. The correct way of saying this is Moog, Moog, with almost like a K at the end. You don't really say Moog, you say Moog, and yeah, I think that's a name that originates from the Netherlands somewhere, which is pretty close to the German language. So Moog would be, I'm pretty sure that would be the correct way of saying this. You can see my lovely Behringer Model D here also, which sounds amazing, but that's that's a completely different topic. We want to talk about MIDI connectivity and MIDI functions on the MC-505 today. And like so many other things in the 505, this is a bit complicated, but I'm going to try to talk you through all of this stuff so that I hope I can answer your questions on how this is done. Because many people were, or well, yeah, it sounds pretty cool to say so many people have asked me. In fact, I think two of my viewers wanted to know how to hook up a MIDI keyboard to the MC-505, and at first I thought, well, that's not that complicated. You simply take a MIDI cable out of the keyboard into the MC-505 and that's it, pretty much. But no, there's a lot more to it, and especially when it comes to controlling external gear with this MIDI controller keyboard, that's when things really start getting complicated. And that has to do with mostly with two pages in the MC-505 that really look very, very similar. So it's easy to confuse these two things, and you have to pay close attention to what these functions are actually called. And the first of these functions is the sequencer output settings that you can access holding down Shift and then pressing pad key number 8. This takes you to this screen where you can see all your tracks, basically. Also, the mute control track gets a dedicated assignment here, whether to send the MIDI signals that are used for this track, whether these signals should be sent to the internal sound source of the MC-505, to an external machine. That's what the E stands for. I for internal, E for external, and then B for both at the same time, which is the same also for the rhythm part and then synth parts 1 to 7. So one could think that when making changes here, and say I want to use my Waldorf micro Q for only parts 5, 6, and 7, and all the other parts should use the internal sound source of the 505. I then only, okay, maybe mute control doesn't matter, okay, also set to both, but then you would change the rhythm part, and then synth parts 1 to 4 to internal. So set up the I underneath the numbers there from 1 to 4. Then 5 only sent to the external synth, in this case the micro Q. 6 the same, only using the external synth, and then 7 set to both to layer the sounds of the 505 together with the micro Q. And then you hold down the key, and I'm on part 7 now. So, and yes, I do get the sound of the 505, which is this kalimba sound, together with a sound that I have assigned here on the micro Q, which in this case is a preset called Purple 5 Pro X. OBX Purple 5 Pro X, by the way. Okay, so I can only listen to the micro Q when I switch this tone switch off for this one tone that the kalimba patch consists of. So that gives me only the sound of the micro Q. I could change the preset here. Maybe use this choir 2.0. I kind of like that sound. Okay, along with the kalimba sound from the 505, it sounds like this. Okay, so then you want to make a little recording, and yeah, in this case, now let's go to the external keyboard here. Now we press a key on the external keyboard, and suddenly we don't hear the micro Q anymore. Even though on this sequencer output page we have both set up for track number 7. But we overlooked something, and that's that this page sets up the MIDI signal flow only for the sequencer of the MC-505. What we are doing here is we are either using the little built-in keyboard on the 505 itself or an external keyboard. And also we have our keyboard remote setting set to on in this case, which means that the external keyboard will play all the sounds of the currently selected track only. So in this case, that's the pure voice patch. I don't really like it so much. I think I'm going to maybe use something like this instead. And now remember, we had this set up to external here. But playing our external keyboard gives us only the sound of the 505. Now when we press a key on the 505, we hear both sounds. Even though this was set to external only. Okay, but again, the sound doesn't come from the sequencer of the 505, but from the mini keyboard here. So we can now switch on the arpeggiator and just recall a little basic pattern. Set pattern length to 1. Okay. Aha, and what we just heard there is the sound of the MC-505 dropping out as soon as the recording stopped. And now the signal is really coming from the sequencer. And that's what this page is used for, only for the sequencer outputs. Now all we hear is the sound of the micro Q. But for this type of arpeggio sound, we can switch the arpeggiator off now, because now the sound's really only coming from the sequencer. The sound isn't so great for this type of sequence though, so I'm going to switch sounds here on, oh actually I'm on a, I had the wrong part chosen. Okay. Whoa, yeah. He's very in level quite a bit here. So now we have a different sound. Oh, that's a nice sound. Okay, so now the sound is just the way that we had things up, coming only from the micro cue. But only because it's the sequencer that produces the notes, not the keyboard. With the keyboard, we get the sound of the 505 itself on top. Okay, so if we cannot simply play the micro cue with a setting using the sequencer output page, then we should have a look at another page, which is now the MIDI setup page here. You hold down Shift and press pad key number 12 to enter MIDI settings, and we have our remote keyboard switched on at the moment. We're going to leave it like that for now, but we want to have a look at other settings here. And here we still have our MIDI local transmission assignment set to both for all of the instrument parts. And maybe this is something we want to change also, because if we set this up like the sequencer output page, then we want the rhythm part to be internal, instrument part number 1 internal, 2 internal, 3, 4 also, and then 5 used for external only, 6 also, and then the only part that we want to hear both sounds is part number 7. So we'll put a B there, an E underneath 5 and 6, and all the others set to I for internal. So when we leave the page, pressing exit, then the MC-505 needs a little time to process things. So what are we hearing now? I am on synth part 5, which should only give me the sound of the micro cue now. And that is MIDI channel number 5. Yes, this is correct. Now stepping over to my keyboard, I still get only the sound of the MC-505. And that's because I still overlooked something, and that's the remote keyboard setting. So again, we need to access the MIDI page here and switch remote keyboard off. Now, what remote keyboard does is, each time I hit a key on my external keyboard here, this will only play back the sound of the currently selected part in the 505, not necessarily in the micro cue as well. So even though I'm on a part that was assigned to only the micro cue, I can only hear the 505 using the external keyboard. So if I set this to off, now I have to control the MIDI channel, or I have to select the MIDI channel which I wish to control on my external keyboard here. So this is where I have to find me the channel that I want to play, which is number 5 in this case. And then hopefully I will get the sound of only the micro cue instead of the 505. So I select MIDI channel number 5 in my keyboard, set enter. And now this still gives me both sounds at the same time, even though I'm on an instrument part that is set to only the external sound of the micro cue. Yeah, and that's because this page, if I have to, or if I focus on the naming of that page again, is called local transmit. Yeah, so whatever is controlled locally on the 505 is now used only for the external device. Not the internal device itself. So let's see if I add tones here. Let's see if I really only get the sound of the micro cue here. I'm going to switch the status off, so now I should hear nothing actually. Yes, okay, so the part is set to external, which is the micro cue. Even though I switched tones off here, or on and off in the 505, I don't hear anything when I play the keys on the 505 itself, but when I use my external keyboard, I am only hearing the sound of the 505. Well, okay, I am hearing both if I have the micro cue turned on. So, excuse me, that was a mistake here. But so this setting doesn't affect whatever is coming from the keyboard. The signal from the keyboard still reaches both devices at the same time. So the only way to avoid hearing the sound of the 505 along with the micro cue is now to simply switch these tones off. And you can prepare yourself a patch in the 505 where these tones are all switched off, only for the parts that are using external gear, like in this case part 5, 6 and 7. Or no, 7 should use both. So, and now that I have remote keyboard off, it doesn't matter which of these parts I select. I can see here that I'm still triggering only part number 5, even when I'm on a different instrument part on the 505 itself. Okay, but at least now I have this set up so that I'm only hearing the micro cue like it was intended when I changed this setting to external here. And a lot of information. I can further decide whether I want to also send program change messages to the micro cue here, if I want to change the patch by making changes on the 505, which can be set right here. Receive program, well, actually transmit program changes. That's what I can. Okay, so right now if I change a sound on the 505, when this is set to on, this will also change the sound on the micro cue. And even, okay, you can see that this is really just the sound from the micro cue. That sound is called Broadway. That is, there's choir pad. Rain after sun. Clock and bells. Okay, so, but I have set this up now so that I can play the sounds of the micro cue on my external keyboard now without hearing the 505. Okay, let's tribute to DX. Let's use this sound on the micro cue. So now let's say I want to have the arpeggiator play along with this, and I want to use my external keyboard here. The arpeggiator is switched on, and still I'm not hearing the arpeggio. When I use the keyboard pads on the 505, the arpeggiator is actually played. That's because the arpeggiator uses a dedicated MIDI channel. And this can be seen also in the MIDI pages here when I am, when I'm on the right page. There's a page called Arpeggio Control Channel, and that is channel 16. So now, in order for me to play the arpeggiator on my external keyboard, I need to stay on the channel of the sound that I need to use, that I wish to use for the arpeggiator here, which is part number 5 in this case, and then select MIDI channel number 16 on my controller keyboard. So that is channel 16 now, and now when I press down the keys on my controller keyboard, I can then hear the arpeggio. Like this. So in a way, when I'm using the arpeggiator, the part that I have selected here is sort of like using the keyboard, the remote keyboard setting, even though the remote keyboard setting in this case is switched off. Yeah, that is really a bit special, and you need to know about all this stuff when thinking about using external gear controlled by the MC-505, so that you don't get these surprises thinking, well, why am I still hearing both sounds when I have set this only to externals? Things like that. All right, I think that's about it. If you have any questions, just write me a message and I'll get back to you. Thanks a lot for watching. See you next time. Bye-bye.